Hey guys, welcome to Trinity Force Podcast. Adam Ponophobia Cogswell here, running solo this week as I bring Chris Alphenaar on to talk to you guys. I mentioned him last week on the podcast. I had just a random brain thought. I was like, we haven't had Chris on in forever, and I think it's a good time to introduce a lot of you new listeners to Chris. And I'm going to give him the floor and tell you who he is because he can do it a lot better than I can.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Alphenaar, and I have been on the podcast a few times in the past. So if those that can remember me, then you'll know that some of the things that I do mental health therapy as a therapist in the state that I live in. So I do counseling sessions with people and also substance use sessions with people too. And then what I'm really passionate about is working with professional esport players. And so I've been working in esports for about 4 years now, and I've worked with different organizations with helping their players and their teams improve their mental skills. And so I help coach that. Right now, I'm currently working with Splice and EULCS, and last year then I worked with H2K in League of Legends, but I've also worked with Splice on other platforms too, like when they had like their Call of Duty team some years ago, and I've also worked for a short period. I worked with TSM's CS:GO team when they had one, but then they sold it. So hopefully that wasn't because of me. No, I'm joking. But so those are the three orgs that I've worked with the most, mainly Splice and H2K. So it's been a really fun ride, like getting to know the players and the teams. And I just recently was able to go to Rift Rivals and help the team with that. So that was fun.
Very cool. Yeah, Chris has been on here a number of times, and we're basically going to be rehashing or redoing an old episode that Chris had come on previously about, because we want to talk about mentality. We get a lot of emails in, or a lot of people asking us, how should I approach this game from a mental standpoint, or what should I do under this situation? And the guys on the podcast, none of us are licensed therapists or any of that, and we try our best to give you our take on how you should, on how you should have an outlook of League of Legends. But I asked Chris to come here because in previous podcasts, we've talked about ways that you can, fix your actual life to make your in-game life better, and vice versa. How to fix your in-game life that makes your actual life better. Coping mechanisms for when you're losing in ranked. Coping mechanisms for when things are not going your way. And we're going to talk all about those this evening. But first and foremost, Chris, I think I'm just going to toss you in with the question that I asked you previously from Vrail. So a lot of people will ask, hey, when something bad happens, I'm going to say, well, this guy's just bad, or this thing happened, or I'm going to say this is unlucky. And I want to know, is that a bad thing? And or should I be looking at it in a different way?
Yeah, that's good. So it is really hard when things happen that we don't like. So I've solo queued and had people decide that they were going to stop playing because they didn't like that our Trinity was split pushing, and he felt like that shouldn't be how you play the game. And so even though we were winning, and so he quit because he decided that because we weren't playing the game the way that he felt was right, that we're not going to play at all. We're not going to win. And so we lost that game. And obviously it bothered me because I still remember that game. And that was like years ago. I haven't been able to play League a lot lately. So when things are happening that we're really upset with, then we want to be able to find a way to either apply blame or to let go of what it is that let go and say, just, I couldn't have done anything about it. And I can relate to that. And I think in some spaces, then it's fine to say like, I think letting go is really good, but in a different way than what we're doing in that time. Like often what it is we're trying to put things out into the external situation, like that player's bad, or it's unlucky because that other player did something different. And what I encourage people to do and players to do is to identify what they do have control over, which is, if we're all honest with ourselves, really us. And so like, I've never seen a League of Legends game that was perfect. And I've worked with people that are really, really good, and have had conversations about what perfection looks like, and how perfection, in my mind, what perfection does is it paralyzes us because we're trying to go for a goal that isn't possible. So instead of trying to say like this happened and I didn't like that, and instead of looking at the game and saying like what is it that I could have done differently than what actually happened. So like was there any, like in that game with Lee Sin, then yes, I couldn't do anything but the fact that he was going to quit. and I was going to lose that game. There wasn't like I can have a great mindset and fix that. Sometimes I've won a 4v5. I'm not saying it's not possible, but the point is like, instead I could have learned, okay, emotionally that was really hard for me to cope with. Like I was pissed off and frustrated, and there's going to be other scenarios in the future where I'm going to feel the same way, but for different reasons. And in those games, maybe I am going to be able to have an opportunity to win if I'm able to turn that around and find ways that I can handle it more effectively. And by saying that was just unlucky, that I queued in the wrong guy, then I wouldn't be looking for it. I would be dropping any responsibility that I have and saying like, that just happened. And that was unlucky. That sucks. And then I can't do anything with that. I can't grow with that because I'm no longer giving myself any sort of space to try to find ways to improve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because I'm thinking about it from my point of view that, excuse me, if I'm going to put this because I know I play differently when I've been drinking and when I am trying to like take it, like really seriously. If I'm trying to take it really seriously, I'm taking your advice. I'm really trying to climb like, the last couple seasons where I've really tried to hard climb and something bad happens. I go, okay, this happened. I couldn't control that. Now I'm going to try to take over the game. And I'm going to try to impart my will to the best of my ability on the game to force people to listen to me. And when I say that is I realize that I can't impart my will on other players. Like I can't make them do what I want to do, but I can start barking out orders and saying, all right, well, if this guy's in here, we need you here. We need to do this. We need to do that, and to the best of my ability, try to lead the team to a victory. But on the opposite side, I see myself do a lot of what we just talked about because if I've been drinking, there'll be a lot of times where I'll go, well, that just happened. Well, that guy's bad, whatever. And then I just stop trying, right? Like it's like I subconsciously decide that because that I couldn't control what happened, and how do I explain it? I decide that because Karthus is feeding, that I am no longer going to try because that person is no longer going to try. So that person now has control over what my actions are in the game, and I no longer look for a victory. And I think that's the wrong mindset, the wrong way to look at it, even if I am impaired or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, my analogy for that is like when people do things that really piss me off or piss somebody else off, then basically I'm now a puppet and that person is the puppeteer and is just making my arms and legs move as it wants because they have control of my emotions now. And I'm no longer making choices that actually, can be helpful. And so, because like, yes, like like if that Karthus is feeding, you're probably going to lose. However, you could still improve like your own CSing. You can improve your own macro. You could practice those thinking about what it is that you need to share with people, like you just mentioned. Like there's so many ways. Like I think what may be happening is instead of like people can see that to think that just by queuing up that they're training, and that's not necessarily the case. Actually, it's actually rarely the case. Like, yeah, you can improve, but at some point then you're going to be hitting that wall because now you're just queuing up, just thinking that time spent is actually doing something. And if you hit that wall where you're, at silver or gold or wherever it is that you're at, bronze, even higher, then, and you're not getting any better, then your natural skill is gone and you've reached the plateau of that. And you instead looking to like purposefully train what it is that you need to improve at. And that's what you can do in those moments because you're still in game. You still have opportunities for things, and that won't help you in that game, but it'll help you in the next game.
Sure. And a lot of this is coming flooding back from last time we talked. And I wanted to know, taking a step back from all of this, is there something that players should be doing mentally to prepare themselves to learn? That's what I'm looking at. Like, if I have decided, I'm going to take all of these from the point of view that people are listening to this podcast because they have hit a plateau or they realize they're reaching that plateau. Now, is there something that I should be doing mentally to prepare myself to learn the next step? Like, do I need to admit defeat? Do I need to admit something to myself? What do I have to do?
I think you have to be open to, and try to increase your own awareness, because when, I don't know about you, but like when things aren't going the way that I want it, I try not to look at myself because that hurts more.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Like it's so much more fun to blame, fill in the blank, like for the reason why things aren't going the way that I want it to. And so, I think many people, if you ask them like, are you looking at yourself as an option, would say yes. and sitting across from thousands of people, then I know that that's not the case. And I also know it because in my own life, then I have spaces that I am just not in a action stage of change. And so there's this model. It's called the 5 stages of change, and I won't go into all of them because we'll lose everybody. They won't want to hear that part, right? But
Yeah,
the
this
idea
isn't
is that,
classroom, Chris.
yeah, the idea is that in any area of our life, then we're at either like a stage where we just don't even see there's an issue, a stage where we see it, but like we don't really want to put in the work to do it, which I think could be like, that's me in League. Like, I like to play League. I want to get better, but I'm not going to put the work in, and I know that. So I'm just I'm not going to get better because I'm not going to do the work to be able to try to get better. Or this preparation stage, which is like when you're really trying to like figure out, getting feedback from others, try to figure out what it is that you need to do. And then there's the action stage where you're actually doing it. And that's really hard. It's not, you may be like, it's not that hard to play a video game. It's really hard to do it in a way that we're trying to grow, and we're trying to like put in hours of macro play, to try to like looking at VODs to see like what macro play is different than what you're doing, to watch your own stuff, to put in the time to increase your own ability just to flash effectively over certain spaces, or like knowing like what, like looking back and saying in that space it wasn't effective to do that, and this time you do this instead, and then doing so, like using like mental skills like imagery to be able to practice that in your mind, so your brain is more likely to do that the next time that you are in that spot. So I'm saying all this and I forgot what the question was. Like, what was the question again? Like, is it what do you have to do to be able to?
I'm just talking about preparing yourself, but these actually,
Yeah.
It makes, what you're saying makes sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to other people, and that you just need to prepare yourself to learn and be open and honest with yourself and say,
yeah, that's what it was. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah. So being open and being aware of like what it is that could be stopping you from getting there, and again, like that can be a hard thing. So that has to be the first step, or you're going to stay in the same spot. Because if you're in silver, then you're doing stuff wrong, and it's fine. But it's not an attack on who you are as an individual, as a human being. It's just a representation of your gameplay. Sure. And that's okay. But I think what can happen is people can get really defensive, and that's just part of our biology. Like whenever we feel threatened, and maybe we feel threatened by our friends who are better than us. Maybe we feel threatened by this belief that we need to be perfect in everything we do. Mm-hmm. And so there's lots of things that can get that defensiveness happening. And so that's what can be like what keeps people stuck.
So I don't know about you, but I'm gonna swing this, and maybe we can use this for something. But it popped in my head, right? Is that I was thinking about just working in real life, and having your job and all that kind of stuff, and how I go to work every single day and I do my job, I do it well, but I'm constantly asking questions because I constantly want to do the best that I can be. And sometimes I feel like I'm being overbearing with the number of questions I ask, because I sat back this week and I went, you know what, I'm the only person in our group that is constantly bugging people with questions. And most of my questions are, to be fair, I believe that most of my questions are ones because I pick up the harder tickets than people do to try to take care of. Most people just want to, reactivate an account and call it a day. But like, I'll pick something up, and then, we sit there and we brainstorm all the shit, try to figure it out. But I'm curious if there's people out there that kind of feel like, they've already passed that step. They've said, I am open. I know I need to make change. I've asked a lot of questions, but am I asking too many questions? At what point am I asking the wrong questions?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I do think it's important to decide what it is you want to train, and then putting energy and focus into that one thing instead of trying to train like 12 things. So I remember like some years ago when I asked you guys if I could have if anybody would like to, if you could give out to your network, like who would like to train with me. So with the people that worked with me, then I gave them like a spreadsheet, and it had some things for them to be able to log. And some of the things were like, what do you want? What's your goal for this match? And so, and for it to be something that's concrete and something that's measurable. So for instance, it could be, let's say it's an 80 carry player and they want to have a certain amount of CS by a certain minute. So their focus that game is to improve at their CS by a certain time frame. And the thing is like most of the time people would have the goal of trying to win, which I can relate to that. I like to win. But But what we're doing when you get into like specifics about what it is you want to train, then you're training things that maybe in the moment are not helping you win, because maybe that's something you're not quite as good at. And so you're going to have some losses, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to feel like you're not actually improving. But if you're building those core skills, then that's where like you're going to be able to then apply them later on, and you're going to see that jump in growth and that jump in skill level.
Well, winning in League is a bunch of little actions that make it to the point where now the Nexus explodes. We have to CS and then get kills, to take jungle creeps, to take towers, to take inhibitors, to take global objectives, to take the inhibitor and win the game, right? So it makes sense that you would say something like that. Like, yeah, my goal is always to win, but if I'm not executing any of the little minor goals that happen throughout the game, I'm never gonna reach that end ultimate goal. I'm always gonna be left feeling empty.
I think it's great to have winning as an outcome, but I think that the thing with having winning as a goal, sometimes that can just give you false information, because how many times have you played and you played horribly and you got your ass carried?
Oh, yeah.
You won, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody, it happened to everybody, right? It happens to me all the time. It's great. I love it. So, but the thing is like you didn't learn anything necessarily. Maybe you did. Like I learned that I still get carried to win at League of Legends, but like if your goal was then to win, then now you've accomplished your goal. But did you really improve? Whereas in other times, then you can feel like you've played perfectly and to the best of your ability, and you lost. And like the feeling that has afterwards is really hard, and that especially when your goal is attached, like when you've attached winning as your goal, is like what has to show that you've done, like you're effective at what you did. And I love to win. I'm very competitive. I'm not saying that winning, like trying to go for winning, is wrong. What I am saying is that like it's just not a very consistent way to determine your skill level. Like, because maybe it was, maybe as a team, then I think as a team that would make sense, that you can see that as an outcome of like some of your own current skill level compared to the team that you just beat, right? They lost you, they just beat you, so in that game they played better. But there's so many factors that go into that. Maybe it wasn't even like your gameplay in that moment. Maybe it was instead your ability to handle emotions. Maybe instead it was your decision making. Maybe there's so many factors, and so that's why winning isn't always the most effective thing to try to focus on, in my opinion.
You make some really good points, and I hope other people out there are, taking notes, or if they, maybe writing down some questions to ask you after the fact. So, I wanted to pivot a little bit and talk about the players in the game and how we can deal with those troll players, or what we can do mentally to, take care of our feeding team, or whatever it may be.
So, I think one of the reasons why you and I have had so much fun with these conversations is because both of us see it very similar, like you mentioned earlier. Like playing League and life, we can find a lot of information in both those spaces. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we get really upset about things that aren't going the way we want it to in League, it shows us our skill level at being able to regulate our emotions. And and I'm not perfect at it, and by any means, and I'm a therapist, so like you would think that my skill level will be higher, and I feel like I do a pretty good job. But what I mean by that is like there's no way that I'm not saying we're not going to feel any emotions. I'm still going to be pissed off at that Lee Sin, or deciding that he's just going to quit because that's not something that aligns with my values. Like, you don't quit on your team. So okay, I think I'm starting to ramble a bit. So let me get back to it. So when we're playing with that Lee Sin that's deciding to quit, then what I like to try to practice, because I think that's where it attaches back to life, like learning how I can do something in there that's going to help me when I have something that doesn't go the way I want it to in my life. Then I've been learning a lot over the last year, is the idea of letting go of things that are outside of your control. And that's really hard because control feels safe. Like and as human beings, like our body is designed for us to stay safe. And so when we are having something go on in our lives or in League that's outside of our control, all of a sudden our alarms are going off in our head of like, I got to get control of this because it feels unsafe. It feels like things are in chaos. And yet that person is doing whatever they want. We can't stop them. Maybe we can try to communicate to them, but you know how that goes, right? Usually it makes it worse. And so like now we're like, these emotions are telling us like all this stuff is not good, and then we're trying to like we're like we may not even really be like, anger is what we usually feel, but anger is a secondary emotion, and so really it's something else underneath that's feeling it. So maybe we feel, hurt that someone just wouldn't even care about the fact that we're playing a game that we're trying to improve at. Maybe we feel disappointed that we just spent this time and now we feel like it's wasted. Maybe we feel sad for our other teammates who's been working really hard. Like fill in the blank of whatever emotions underneath there, and then we're expressing it in anger, right? So learning to let go, which I don't advise people trying to find situations where you have to be taught that, because it's really painful. But at the same time, like I said, like we can, when we have those opportunities, using that again to train ourselves. So how do you do that, right? How do you learn to let go? The way that I train that, and the way that I train players in that is through mindfulness meditation. And so I run a group, like a therapy group of that at my therapy job, and then I teach it as like a skill when it comes to my performance coaching, and then I also do it myself individually. Like I use Headspace, and I last year, when I was working with H2K, I was telling the guys, I was like, you got to do, who was on the team back then? So it was Odoamne, Yankos, Fabivin, and then Che and Nuclear. So I'm telling these guys like, hey, it's important to be able to practice mindfulness because it gives you more awareness. It helps increase your focus, teaches you to let go of things that are outside your control. Like after a person misses a 50-50 smite, like you can't change that anymore, letting it go and refocusing on what it is that you can do in the next 3 minutes. So maybe 30 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. But, and then I wasn't doing it every day. And I'm asking these guys to do that every day. Sure. Right. So I'm like, damn it, I'm a hypocrite. Which I am in many ways, right? Like if we're honest with ourselves, we probably all are in different ways. But so I decided to give myself a challenge to do it 10 minutes a day for a year. And so I was able to do that this last year, which is really cool. And in that process, then I've really been able to train how to let go of things outside of my control, which has been really helpful, and just other experiences I've had in my life over the last year. Sure. So that's like a really, like if you want something to train, I would encourage you, especially for like it helps with emotion regulation too. I feel like that's like, it's a really healthy thing. And I think that there's a lot of buzz for it. Maybe people have heard of this before, so it's not something that you're not familiar with. And it might be where people are like, oh, I've heard of that. It's kind of like this, this psychology thing that people are like, yeah, jump on this and you'll all of a sudden all your worries and cares will be taken away. No, I'm not saying that. It's like it's not easy. It takes time, and it'll take a while for you to feel like you're getting like some of the insights you might want. But I think it's really powerful, and so yeah. So I think that's a way to feel like you can have some control, even because you can do that training. And
so I'm gonna cut you off so you don't ramble on. For those of you that don't know, Chris has a tendency to ramble a bit and can't find the end to get to the end of a sentence. So sometimes
this is why I'm a therapist. I just keep talking.
Yeah, he just keeps talking until he uses all your money, and then you feel like you didn't get anything out of it, right?
Yeah, because I'm supposed to listen more, and I'm working on that. Thanks for reminding me.
But you keep mentioning mindfulness, and I think people have heard. I'm going to call it a buzzword, just because Weldon kind of turned it into a buzzword. For those of you out there, again, unaware, Weldon Green was I think he was the father of League of Legends mindfulness. Am I wrong to say that?
Well, he has his own training. It's the MAC program. It's Mindfulness Acceptance Commitment Training. And so he did bring mindfulness in his way to League of Legends.
Right.
I think
just the league. I'm not saying professional esports or anything, or even just mindfulness in general. But wasn't he?
No, mindfulness is like Buddhism from like thousands and thousands of years ago.
Right.
So
I wanted to talk about what mindfulness is, because people may have just listened to you or perhaps tuned out at a point. But what is mindfulness, and why are we trying to practice it for League?
So it's the ability to stay in the present moment without judging it. What that means is when you're in that moment, you're just experiencing that moment. So like right now I'm doing this podcast with you. And if my mind starts going towards dinner later tonight, then I'm no longer in the present. I'm thinking about something that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And so and so then what you do is you just note and say, oh man, I'm thinking of something that I have no control over right now, and then bring it back to this moment. Because if I'm thinking about that, I'm not going to be fully present with you and being able to be in this moment, doing this podcast to the best of my ability.
I gotcha. I just want to make sure that people have an understanding of what mindfulness is, because of course, we need to be in the moment in every game we're playing. If we're playing ranked, I said this last week, when you queue up to play ranked, in my mind, you're gambling with your LP. You're putting LP on the table just like you put money on the table and say, this is what I believe that I'm going to win back, or double my money, right? Double my LP.
But see that right in that moment, then you're not being mindful because you're already thinking about. Well, I mean, I guess you can yes, you can identify that like that could be an outcome. But when we think about that, like when we get afraid when we're in the game because we're thinking, okay, now our teammate just get first blood. They also took first tower, and I've been camped, so I haven't really been able to get enough CS to be able to impact the game the way I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Then your mind is already going to the future about the outcome of that game, thinking that that's a loss. And when we get to the future about things that haven't happened yet, then that's where anxiety comes in. It's called rehearsing. You're rehearsing what you think is going to happen in the future. And so it's learning to come back to what you can do right then in the moment. So maybe you can take that grump. I play top, so that's what I have to go do when I'm getting crushed. Come down and if I'm on, what is that, red side or blue side? I don't know, the left side. Then blue side, thanks. Then go down and get that grump and maybe get some XP and some money that way. But
well, my rambled point going there was, I told people that you've put money on the table and now you need to play for that money. So practicing mindfulness while you're in the game, trying to do everything that you can to win your money back but it sounds like even if I did that, I should do it without thinking about the money that's on the table. I should just be thinking about what I can do in that moment or in the game to affect the outcome of the game in my favor. And that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of people. Actually, this is a good segue into that ranked anxiety. Trying to work through ranked anxiety, trying to work through that, queuing up or whatever. How do we work through that? A lot of people out there have a problem with just pressing the play button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that rehearsing that the outcome is going to be not what you want it to be, and there's that anxiety that comes up and afraid that of what that could mean. Like I might drop then into the division below me now because I've lost X amount of games at 0 LP. And the other thing it can be too is called rehashing. So rehashing is when we go into the past, and that's more of like sadness, depression, like just not feeling very good about what's been going on because and I guess it can lead into some rehearsing too, but the rehashing of like experiences that really sucked. So like for instance, I remember when I was working with Splice's Call of Duty team, then we were working on how they had an experience that was difficult in game, and when that moment would come up again, then we had to do some work to try to learn to not let this new version of what feels like a past experience now get them stuck, right? So let's talk about with League of Legends. So you have that time when you do give up first blood, and you remember last time that you gave up first blood and how much you got crushed afterwards and how it snowballed, and then that you lost the game basically for your team because of how many times you died. And now your head's there and you're thinking, what if I do that again? And you're no longer actually playing the game that well because you're just thinking about all the possible outcomes that could happen again because you've already had that experience before. And so what mindfulness can help us do is let go of the fact that isn't what happened right now. Like, yes, the first blood happened, but like we haven't been crushed yet. And there's certain things we can do to try to limit that. And so like focusing on that instead, which is really hard. Like I'm saying that right now. And like, it's not an easy thing to do, which is why you have to train in order to be able to practice that. And even with training, then there can still be moments when it's really hard to do. So it's always something to be able to try to improve at.
I think there's a lot of good points throughout this discussion that people can take into the real life. Chris, you and I have had discussions in the past about I statements and using I statements when you're talking to somebody else to try to diffuse the situation or try to you can explain it more than I can, but I think you can actually, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you could use I statements in League, like I can do this, I can do that, I can control this. I know it's more of when you're having a conversation with somebody, but even then, I know a lot of people out there play with their friends and something happens and there's blame being thrown around. Is there anything you can talk about I statements and playing with friends?
So when so I hear what you're saying when like with I statements, with talking to yourself about like what it is that you want. And you're right. Generally, I statements are for communicating to somebody else. So let's say you are playing with friends, and they're the one that is now um, uh, in game. It's really hard. Um, in game, trying to communicate, then
Well, if we're playing with friends, we're assuming we're sitting on Discord or something. I've sitting there a number of times where Sean and I have got each other's throats and said, "Well, you fucked this up. You fucking did that. You did this. You did that. Well, no, you did. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?"
I
And
hear you.
and
I think in game, I think it's really hard to be effective because there's so much going on. But I
okay,
think after the game, like being able to, if you like, this is where I think that uh, um, having like a conversation about like, hey, when this happens, I'm feeling like you're not doing, like, let's say you're duo queuing in your bot, and once you're the AD carry, and then the support is your buddy, and saying like, when I feel like I'm like just being left out to dry, like when this happens, and you're not saying that like you're leaving me out to dry when you do that, because that's going to be more aggressive. But you can share that with them. Maybe you can share it in game too. But it's man, it's something that can be really hard to try to improve at communication while you're also trying to improve at a game. And so I would practice that before you even get into a game. That way, when you do communicate in short ways, that you're then it doesn't, where it's coming from, like from a you don't have history of before or after games being really toxic with your friend. So they don't, so it lessens their assumption that when you're short in game that you mean that you really do hate them.
And I'm trying to approach this more of we have people out there who duo or trio or play flex or whatever, and I'm sure there's arguments that happen, and there has to be ways to diffuse those arguments to continue to play the game together, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I bring I statements in this, because I'm sure at the end of the games people are talking about, well, what did we do wrong that game? And
Mm-hmm.
if you are with your bot laner, like if I'm down there with Dom, if I'm not using I statements saying, well, I feel like I feel like I was left out to dry during the situation, or I felt like I should be doing this while everyone else was taking dragon or whatever it may
Right.
be.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm getting toward. That's what I'm trying to fish out of you, is that kind of, how can I talk to my teammates? How can I talk to the people that makes it so I'm not combative, but I'm also,
Mm-hmm.
helping everybody else stay calm and keep cool.
Yeah. It's really focusing on your own experience and sharing what that was, rather than telling others what they did. Because the others were impacted your experience. So you can tell how their actions impacted, how like or your experience in that game. But when you tell them what they're doing and why it's wrong, I'm still looking for people that enjoy that. I haven't really found anybody. So it when we talk about our experience instead, I'm not saying it's going to always turn out well, because people can, that could be when they hear any sort of feedback, they may get defensive, and no matter what, because of their own stuff. Um, and because I think everybody, I don't know if everybody, I don't like to use like extremes, but most people, if not almost all people, are more likely to be harsh towards themselves. Like there's nothing someone can tell me that has been worse than what I've told myself. Let's put it
Sure.
that way, because I'm quite hard on myself, as a recovering perfectionist. And I think that when I say something to you, and there may be, or let's do it the other way, you say something to me, and as a recovering perfectionist, that could touch something in me of like, oh, I should have done that right, because that would be what I would hear, right? I need it right. And so we all have our own stuff that lens or that filter of how we hear things. And so when we communicate by saying this was my experience, it makes it less likely for their people's own stuff to come up, because now you're not attacking them and they have to be defensive and try to attack back or run away. Instead, then there can be an open conversation, and it just makes it more productive, and then also too, the other person is seeing them being talked to in a way that's like healthy, and it feels like I can have a conversation, and you're more likely to want to do it back. And so you can actually develop that type of a dialogue where you can learn what could be different, so you guys can win next time.
So there you go.
or do better.
I hope that helps out. I hope that helps some people out there. Like I said, we got people that dual Q quite a bit and ask us, my dual Q partner is this, or my brother is doing this. How can I change this? And you can't change what you can't control, right? You can't control that Lisa, and you can't control the fact that your brother's feeding, whatever it may be. Now, is there, through talking with you over the years and listening to these podcasts that you've done, I've learned a lot about how I can how I can change my real life, and it affects my in-game life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that I talk to my wife has helped me, change how I talk to the people I play games with. How I, handle situations in real life is how I change how I'm handling stuff in game. So is there a point here where you may look at what you're doing in game and need to take a step back and look at what's going on in your actual life that could turn everything on its head?
So I think the story might fit. As my dog comes in, so hopefully she won't be too loud.
You're all right.
So I went to this train. What?
Sorry, no. I'm sorry. You're talking about that training, and don't forget that story. I'm gonna bring it back up to you. Now, years ago, we had a listener write in. Do you remember that email that you got that I ended up forwarding on to you? And the guy was asking for advice, and I don't want to talk too much about it. It was
yeah.
Can we talk about that at all, or is there too much confidentiality in there?
Yeah, I don't think that would be. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
I try to stay really.
That's fine. No, that's fine. That's why I was asking. I should have asked you before this podcast started.
No. That's a good question.
We had someone who had some things going on, and Chris helped him through it, and I think through the conversation he realized that he needed to change some of the things that was going on in his actual life to change how in game was going. So I'm going to let you talk about what happened at that conference, because I thoroughly believe if you change yourself, you'll change how you play in game.
So what this is coming down to is like this idea that it's coming from a space of often we want to try to do something to make things better. Okay. And so I'm thinking of this in reference to what you're just talking about with being with like a solo queue or like duoing with somebody or like playing with a team. Then I think often we want to fix things. And sometimes in situations we need to do something. We actually need to do less to do more, if that makes sense. Okay. So I went to this conference and I was learning about this type of situation, and where sometimes there's like what they were saying was there's half of people in the world, half people are really sensitive and half are not as sensitive, and it's not right or wrong. It's just kind of how people come into the world. And so as he's describing it, then my daughter is like coming into my head, right? So she's gonna be 6 pretty soon, and she's like super sensitive, and when her son, oh my gosh, her brother, my son, would pull her hair, then she'd get really upset and I'd be like, well, just, you're bigger than him, just take care of it. And I would try to give answers or ways to try to fix things, if you will, to make things better. And what I realized was that in that training was that I just needed to let her know that what she was going through was okay, that it mattered. And so I said, like, I came back from that training and she was doing the same thing. She was bawling and she's like, Braden pulled my hair. And I was just like, man, that sounds like that really hurt. And then she like instantly stopped crying. Mind you, normally this goes on for like 2 minutes, right, of crying. And I was just like, I was like, what do you think that could be done differently or could happen? And she's like, I could come and tell you guys, or I could, something else. And I was like, holy shit. Like, this is crazy. And so I share that because like often like when we have a buddy or we have even ourselves, we try to do all these things to like just fix it because it feels good to fix things. It feels like we're making progress towards something. But sometimes I think we just got to sit and listen and like with that person and just be like, hey, like just listen to what they're going through, and they'll probably be able to figure out what's going on better than if you tell them, right? So that duo Q person that is trying to figure it out, just listening to what is and saying like, I see why that was difficult, then I think that can there's so much context to this that I think I need to share, and it's going to really bore everybody. And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to wrap this back the way I want to, but like yeah. So try to stop me like you normally
I
do.
can try to ground you a little bit here. I'm looking for changes you can make in your life to make it so that you're more accepting when it comes into League of Legends. I think a lot of these changes. I'll give you an example. I have learned. I was going to ask you as we were doing this: is it a bad thing if everything that comes my way, I kind of just let it brush off my shoulders, and I just let it? I try to fix it after the fact, or not fix it, or I just try to cope with it, and then figure out how I'm going to move on with that knowledge. Let's say that. I'm just bringing something stupid. I don't know. I broke my finger, or I broke my right hand, right? And I go, oh,
Hmm.
that fucking sucks. Now I can't use my mouse. Well, nothing I can do about it but wait for it to heal. I guess I'm using my left hand, right? You get that idea. And
Hmm.
the same thing I'm trying to
Hmm.
bring in the game. Well, this Karthus is feeding. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm just going to try to fix it. So, like, if I take what I've learned from you today from the in-game saying, fuck Karthus is feeding, and I bring it into my real life, I'm practicing it in more than one location, and now I can
Yeah.
take that and turn it right back around to being played in the game. You know what I'm saying? So I was gonna ask
Hmm.
you, I'm drawing parallels here between life and between how we're doing it in the game. Do you feel there is merit in taking a lot what you learn here in the game, again, just taking things as they go, practicing mindfulness, and using that in real life? And does that correlate back into the game?
Yeah, I think that's what sports design, or it's like one of the best things about sport, is that we can like it teaches us things that uh, it teaches us things that we can learn about not just how to be better at that sport, but just how to be able to handle life. I just think that like no one likes to lose, and so but how many times are you going to lose in other areas of your life? How many times whether it's losing a job, whether it's like losing a friend, whether it's moving to a new place, like whatever it could be, like how you learn to handle that those smaller losses can help you be able to be ready for the times when bigger things happen.
Sure.
So I mean, that's a way that you could take an outcome from a game and apply it to your life. Yeah, I think sport can really teach us a lot.
Well, if any of you guys out there want somebody that's taken everything that Christopher has said today, and I just got the first time I've literally ever called you Christopher. Now I don't know why, but if anyone has ever wanted to take what Chris has said and seen somebody who's turned his life around, really, you can look straight here because he and I have had a number of conversations, and like I said, there's a lot of things. We were here. I'll give you a good example. When I was moving to Louisiana, we got up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I locked the keys in the car, in the truck, in the U-Haul, and so I had to wait an extra 2 hours to get in the U-Haul to start my 12-hour trip down to Louisiana for that big move. And a previous version of Adam would have been very, very upset, and I'm talking screaming and yelling and stuff. But you kind of take a moment and go, well, that sucks, but I have to do something about it. And now I have to keep a leveled head, and I have to move forward, and I have to do something about it. And I feel like a lot of the things that I learned to cope with in game, Karthus is dead, that fucking sucks. But this is what I'm going to do to rectify that situation. And I move right into crisis management rather than freaking out and screaming and crying about it, right? And I would love to see more people learn those skills and cope with those skills. Now, I'm not perfect about it. I still freak out. My baby has woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've thrown a little bitch fit because I didn't want to be up at 3 o'clock feeding the baby. But, little things like that help you in bigger moments in life. And that's really what I feel like I'm preaching for. Like, I'm preaching to the choir when I'm talking to Chris about this, but I think there's a lot of other players out there that could really use that to help them become not only better in-game players, but better people in real life. And you get more opportunities, in my opinion, when you have an outlook like that. So that's
Yeah.
my soapbox.
No, I think that's really good. It does. I think too, like that speaks to one. I appreciate that we've been able to have these conversations. It's been really cool, and for you to be willing to talk to me about that kind of stuff. And I think that in my experience too, in order to be able to get good feedback, a lot of times I have to hear it from someone else, right? And I can do as much as I can on my own, but till there's someone that's maybe objective or is like willing to tell us hard things, then we may not. It'll take us a long time to get to see some of those things that we could learn by talking with someone
Mm-hmm.
and figure things out, right? So if you have someone like someone that you can say, hey, this is something I want to improve at, could you keep me accountable? think that's a really powerful thing to do, because then not only are you putting yourself out there, and that's kind of scary to do, it's also a way to get feedback that's going to be, honest, at least hopefully. Like sometimes you got to make sure you find someone that has the skill level to do it. I don't mean it could be game skill level, but I just mean like that's effective at being able to give feedback, because not everyone will give you their opinion, but not everybody is effective at giving it in a way that's going to be able to be received and feel like you can continue to do it, because it may not feel safe.
I think everybody out there listening needs to find somebody like that. Mine used to be Dom. He would walk up to me and he would go, listen, no malice behind this. We're going to talk about this. It's just a couple of friends. You fucking sucked last night. How can we fix it? And I go, you're right. I did suck. And I felt attacked when we were talking about it, but let's talk about it now, because I don't feel, I'm not on guard anymore. And we figure shit out and I fix it for the next time that we play. And I think more people out there should find somebody like that if they don't already have it. And you can go in Discord, find people, talk to somebody in your group of friends, whatever it may be. Someone out there is going to hold you accountable for your actions, assuming you play with them every single time. Now, I guess if we went over this, excuse me, but like one last thing, how is there an easy way to become open to accepting criticism?
No, there's no easy way. No, that's not an easy thing. I don't think there's many things that are worthwhile. I don't think often are easy anyways. So, I think there's but the ways to do it.
There you go. That's better. Are there ways to accept criticism, or to be in the right mindset to accept a healthy amount of it?
I think first you got to be able to trust that person. So I think that's building that relationship. Maybe it's you trust them because they're an authority on the subject, right? You might be able to give them trust faster because they've proven to be someone that's good at the game. If you're talking about gameplay, maybe it's like for you, I was thinking of this when you were talking, like, how did you know that even afterwards, like when we talking with Dom, that he wasn't just going to continue with what you were frustrated with before?
Because I trusted Dom.
Yeah. And so how'd you build that?
Yeah, just through playing with him, right?
Right.
And a lot of it is through playing with him and talking to him every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually things he would say would become true. And so I'd respect his opinion, because his opinion is shown to be correct in
mm-hmm.
scenarios. And we build rapport over time to the point where we get to that point where I can just say, well, my buddy Wrecker is actually a better person than this, but not many people know Wrecker, but he and I have such a dynamic where he can go, hey, fuckhead, you need to stop tapping so fast when you're firing in PUBG. And I go, oh, all right. And then I try it next time. I'm like, well, damn, you were right. Yeah, I know I'm right. That type of thing.
Yeah. And it's so those people that are doing it because they care about you and want you to improve, rather than to be someone that is trying to prove that they're better and that they know it and that they're going to show you that you know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what I'm hearing is like someone that wants you to get better. Yes, because then you'll both be able to play better, but it's not as a way of like it's not like there's safety within that relationship. And so if you're trying to get feedback and it's from someone that is doing it in a way where you feel like where it looks like their actions are just to do it to make themselves feel good because they're just doing, then that's just there's no way that type of situation is going to help you, because
am I allowed to talk about
to get some information
replay reviews right now? Because that's why I feel like,
yeah, go for it.
I know people with our Patreon would do replay reviews, right? They're $25 a month for one replay review, and
Mm-hmm.
but you also get Champions Like podcast and all the other stuff with it. So really, you're paying $10 for a replay review, which I think is, in my opinion, is pretty cheap. But anyway, we're not going to get there. But like, if you come to me and you pay that money and you get the replay review, I'm going to give it to you, no handcuffs, no, I'm not going to hold any punches. I'm going to say, listen, I'm not going to swear at you, but I'm going to say, listen, you were in the wrong place. This is what you need to be doing. But and I may not come at you like as a nurturing mother, for example, but I'm doing it from I know.
I would love to see you try to be a nurturing mother.
Can't. He's heard me. I'm like, listen, you are in the wrong place, and this is why you're in the wrong place, but you can't be here because of these reasons. And I'm going to talk to you like pretty much in that tone of voice. And I'm not, and I know that I've had some people tell me that, listen, I can't, I love all the advice you give me, but the way that you presented it was a little harsh. And I go, I'm only doing it that way because I want to see you get better. I genuinely, truly put the time in it because I want to see you get better at this game. And I'm doing it the only way that I know how to tell you. I don't know you well enough to say it any other way. And so I hope other people out there who have friends maybe realize that as well, is maybe your friends there may be rapport and trust, but they may not know how to tell you how to do something any other way than the way they're talking to you. And you have to sift through the shit to get to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my anecdotal experience with talking with people. I have Dom, who I trust, and he understands how to talk to people. Wrecker, not so much. I mean, he does, but he'll just tell me blankly how it is, and I either take it or I leave it. And then I kind of adopt that style when I'm doing replay reviews or talking to people on the in the podcast. This is what you need to do. Take it or leave it. And I think my past history of playing this game and how many years, speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
So. This isn't an Adam soapbox or anything here at the end. I'm just trying to talk like in general so people get a different idea of how different people may talk to you.
Well, I think too, one of the reasons why it's hard is because it is difficult to find a space where it's like where it's valuable, because you can get a lot of opinions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be helpful. And so like you said, that $10 to get feedback, then that's really cheap. It's a lot cheaper than me to sit in an hour therapy session with me.
That's fair, right?
So it's in that, I'm sure it takes more than an hour to get that replay review done. And it probably takes that long. Games are shorter now than they used to be, but not always. I guess it depends what elo you're in.
It's about, if you're doing a replay review, and if you want a replay review and you don't have the money, I understand there's a lot of people out there and aren't looking for some kind of feedback. Friends, Discord, Summoner School, all that stuff. But like, that's really the next step, is that I'm trying to take this replay review to tie this back into the way 45, 50 minutes ago where Chris, you said you need to pick one thing in game to fix every single game. Well, you need somebody to tell you what that is if you don't know what it is. So you need to go out there and get somebody to critique your gameplay or play with you. And, it all wraps in together enough to be in a community and helping each other out. So I think
there's sites too that have like free coaches. Like that have played, like that'll show what their rank is and stuff like that. And
like League Coaching GG or something.
Yeah, I think that's one of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, League Coaching GG is one you can do.
Yeah. But just pounding like the play button, it's not going to be effective. It is if you want to have fun. Like that's what I do, because I just want to have fun. I like to play certain champions and go out and kind of hope that I win. But I'm not doing it to try to be really good. I just want to play the game for fun reasons. But
$45 for a replay review for this challenger level player.
Yeah, there's some. I think I've seen some like plat and diamond players that are free because they just want to practice their coaching skills.
Mm-hmm.
So for some of those that are lower, but again, the higher you get up, then the more you're going to have to pay for higher level services, because they've put a lot of time in, and they're basically in the business I am, the business of selling my time, right? So that's the what I have to as my wear.
So we'll leave that. I don't want to. I know we spent 5 minutes there talking about shit. I wasn't trying to turn this into like something about this is why you should pay us to do things, because that's not.
I didn't hear that. I think it's good to highlight how it's, if you want to get feedback, then you're going to have to search for it. Mm-hmm. You can't be passive and hope that somebody's going to start giving you good feedback. And so be active in that relationship. Like, is that like, if you didn't see the results from what Dom was telling you, then you wouldn't have continued listening to him.
That's
right?
true.
So,
yeah.
And because you probably have had other people that have told you things, and either the results weren't the same, or you didn't, like, you may have a good relationship with them, but you may not have trusted it because you haven't seen it backed up in their own life, or whatever it could be. And so it's hard to find those people and places. And so sometimes you have to go to a spot where you can just get that. It's kind of like it makes it faster for you, but you may have to pay for the speed with which you get the information. You know what I mean? Like for me to try to find a friend that is well, no, I take that back. I could probably find someone, but sometimes when we don't always have the access to people that are a higher level player. Right. So you may have to go a different route.
most people out there don't have access to like our Slack or the people that we've put together a lot of times, but they do have you do now have access to Discord. Anybody out there has access to Discord and can ping any of the higher ranked players in there at any point in time, and a lot of people will just give you free advice. So, but that's enough of that. I don't have any other pieces for this conversation. I kind of feel like in the future I may have to bring you on here in 3-4 weeks or something again, and we have to have like a follow-up discussion about more mentality or other pieces.
What would be kind of cool, it would be if like we did a lot of general stuff and we could get deeper into things if we wanted to. And so I don't know about you, but if anyone had like specific things that they wanted to get more depth on, then I'd be down for that.
Yeah, feedback at trinityforcepodcast.com. Chris is always available at C Alphenaar. There's 2 A's in that name.
There's 3 technically if you got the first one.
That's true. C Alphenaar, ALPHAA. No, A. I can't fucking do. I can type it, but I can't do it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just made it hard for people to find me. That's what I do.
Just type in Chris and Trinity Force Network. It'll fucking pop up. I promise. It'll be out there. But yeah, you can find Chris. If you have any questions, feedback at trinityforcepodcast.com. I know Chris is always available for you to ask questions. He'll answer very simple questions. And if you have anything else, I'm sure I'm putting him on the spot, but I'm sure he'll be happy to send you an email back to talk to you about anything. Right, Chris? I've gotten some back to some. Sometimes I just refer back to like the podcast if it's something that's similar to that, or I'm going to be going on a different show next week, and someone had asked me like what it was like to get into esports, and so I was like, well, I'm actually going to be talking about that soon, so I will refer you to that, because instead of typing it all out. Right. So sometimes I do that, so the heads up. Cool. I've done it before too. I think I had one guy email me 2 or 3 months ago, and I sent him about 6 different podcast episodes about every single topic he asked me about, and that kind of and honestly, that email kicked off the spree of going back over the old podcast, because I realized that most people probably haven't ever heard your voice and haven't heard a lot that's going on. But we'll leave it there.
I have one more thing though. If people do ask me about like mental health stuff, then I don't respond to that usually, because I just refer you to someone that's near you, or tell you to talk to that person, because I like when it comes to clinical things like that, then I don't want to it's important to be able to work with somebody rather than getting stuff like I've had people on I have open DMs and people on Twitter be like, I have all these things going on, what should I do? And I don't get into that space because I just don't feel like it's ethically helpful for me to do so.
Is this like the medical shows you listen to on podcasts that say, I'm not your medical provider, don't take any information that I have, don't use any information I give you, please consult your medical professional? That's
the disclaimer for this episode. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I listen to Weird Medicine, Dr. Steve, and his whole thing is if you have questions that you're too afraid to ask your doctor, or just he'll talk about literally anything. Your sphincter is rupturing from your asshole and you want to know why. You're spewing shit everywhere every time you poop, right? I know that's absolutely disgusting, and I probably need to cut that out. I'm going to bleep that entire thing. That was 58:15, but I'm going to bleep that actual sentence there. But he'll answer it on the podcast. Like, you could legitimately ask this dude anything, so I love it because he'll fucking talk about anything. The dude's super smart.
Cool.
Makes it even better.
That's
weird.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Huh. Yeah, I gotta bleep that. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening. Chris, where can do you want them to just email feedback if they have any general questions, and I'll forward it on to you?
That, or like you said, at Chris Alphenaar. So it's ALPHENAAR on Twitter. I have open DMs, so if you have questions, that you can do that. I'm in the Discord, so you can ping me on that too.
Name Chris in Discord. You find him under the podcaster section. His name is Purple. I need to change him to shun the old podcasters though, because by the way, hearthofthecards.com is no longer a URL that works.
Oh,
I love that
story.
Name. That name was my favorite.
It was so good.
And that
I know.
intro was my
and our
favorite.
Intro. Oh my gosh, I loved it. That was a fun time.
All right, guys, that's it. We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for listening to the Trinity Force podcast. Thanks, Chris, for coming on, and we will see you all the next time an episode comes out. Peace.